Welcome to Stratwatch. Here in episode 8, guys, we'll be covering how you can improve as an individual. This episode will focus on how one who might want to get into competitive Overwatch, or who might want to just improve their Overwatch game in general, could do so. We'll be looking at the mechanics of the game, the things that hours of practice can improve, and we'll also be looking at the more nebulous ideas, the concepts and situations that take understanding through hours of playing as well as watching and researching the game itself. Again, my name is RaptorZ, and I'll be walking you guys through this episode of Stratwatch. So to answer the question of how to improve individually, we have to first know what are the mechanics of the game. I think there are a few mechanics that you can improve on outside of just studying the game and watching professional play. The first one would be obviously aiming. The ability to properly hit the target that you're shooting at as well as follow it is very important, which following it will be called another term, tracking, and we'll be going over that in a second. The second major mechanic that is important is obviously communication skills. This is a team-based game. Your ability to communicate with your allies or your teammates is incredibly important to give them the information that they need to succeed in the game, as well as them giving you the information that you need to succeed. And then the third and final point, which we'll be going into a map to look at, is understanding the heroes, the maps, and obviously the synergies between the heroes. If you do not know all of the heroes' abilities and all of the damage values for them, then you're not going to be able to intuitively make better decisions because you don't know the exact values. So again, we'll be going over all those. Let's start first with aiming though. Aiming is a very basic concept in first-person shooters and is honestly one of the hardest parts to master. No player is ever really going to say they have mastered this, so this is something you can always improve on. You can switch to any of the DPS heroes and simply just follow around a bot, aiming at its chest while moving around. This will just help you learn how to track. This is just something that you can do in training mode. Again, these are ideas. I'd like to preface this, that these are just ideas that I've come up with here in the last week or two to just kind of improve my own game. So if you guys go into the training mode or into your own quick matches and just practice these kinds of things or make up your own training regimen, it can help you out a lot. But again, this is something anyone can do. The next thing you can do is obviously start shooting. Part of Soldier is that if you click every 4 times, or every 4 bullets instead of holding down the trigger, your accuracy is 100% for the first 4 bullets. So what you can do with this is practice headshotting. You can track the head, and as you can see, I'm not the best tracker in the world either, as it takes a lot of practice to get better at this. So what you want to do is just continually run around and track the same target. And you can obviously make it harder on yourself, right? So let's say if you wanted to make it harder, you could stand over here. And you wanted to shoot only this bot. Well, you can only shoot this bot. And then you go to the next one, right? And you go farther away, and you make it even harder. And then that bot goes around the corner. And so you just want to like practice these kinds of things. And obviously these are practiced in quick match games, but the big thing I want to bring up is that practicing this kind of stuff in training mode will help build those basic mechanical skills. And again, the main thing we're just looking at here with Soldier is practicing tracking. It is actually difficult in the heat of the battle when you're moving around and dodging stuff, right? To keep on this target when you're dodging stuff. So being able to do that in an environment where you're not pressured is critical to being able to do that in an environment where you are. Another mechanical thing that you can do, and Widowmaker is one of the heroes that I've practiced a fair bit of because I enjoy playing her, but this also applies for Hanzo, is being able to flick shot. So you know there's a target to your left, you want to be able to turn and look and shoot at the target. And so just continually practicing this until you get the feeling right. And everyone's sensitivity is a little bit different, and there are ideal sensitivities, and it is something that I need to set up personally. So I will not go into sensitivities, and there are plenty of videos, but again, just practicing these kinds of mechanics and switching it over so you're practicing the right side. Like, it's much harder for me to flick to the right than it is for me to flick to the left. I feel much more comfortable going left than I do right. So maybe it's more for me to practice looking right. You can even go to the next level and be doing 180s. Now, some of this stuff is a little tricky, and it's not necessarily worth a lot of the practice. So evaluate it. If you're not necessarily the best Widowmaker and you want to improve on Widowmaker, don't focus on being able to pull off 180 headshots. Maybe come over here and just focus on proper flicking to the head and pulling the trigger. And don't aim for the body. That's something that you will do in quick matches, and it's very important to tag bodies as a Widowmaker. But in this, we're trying to train and practice our mechanics so we can improve as an individual. So again, primarily aim for the heads and try to recenter where you're looking so that you always have a better center point. And obviously as you get better, what you're going to do is add in the ability to unscope. So you want to take your shot, wait for the charge, and then scope. Wait for the charge, scope. And just keep doing that so you have a better view of the battlefield. And so those are just some ideas so far. With Widow and Soldier, again, these can be applied to many heroes. I will only be going over one more hero in this section because I want to move on to the communications, synergies, hero maps, and other mechanical stuff that you guys can improve on just by learning the basics and practicing the basics. But something with Tracer that is, I think is very helpful to learn is the idea of being able to see the map as a whole while only looking at part of it. So when you're fighting as Tracer and you have to blink through someone, being able to blink through them and turn around and shoot accurately is very important. So practice with Tracer, rather than just following a target per se, and tracking you can still practice. Like you can see, it is still worth it to practice tracking. And these targets aren't moving, so it is easier. But the bigger thing is that if you can blink through, turn around, and accurately shoot, it will improve your gameplay with Tracer. And these are just those little things, again, that you can do before your matches, before you want to get into quick match, little warm-ups. But again, these are just ideas, and people have said, well, you know, how do you get to that level of other top players? How do you get to the Taimus, the Surefours, the Harblues, the Atoms? And I will be going over supports, and I will be going over tanks at another point, guys. But the big thing is, how do you aim like these people, these players? How do you get to that level? How do you practice? And this is one way that you can do it for the basics. And that's what I want to emphasize here, guys, is that part of learning a game is that you get very strong at the basics. As you can see, I am not the best Soldier player, and my tracking skills for continually hitting the head are very poor, to be frank. And so if I wanted to play competitively and I wanted to play a DPS role, I would tell you that I would have to practice and I would have to get this down. And then I would have to be able to go into a quick match and emulate that to the next step, and so on and so forth. So again, guys, this is just how you can improve the concept of aiming and tracking, which are important mechanical aspects to the game. The next thing I want to go over is communication, and this is a little bit of a nebulous concept, so it will be more difficult to explain with actual context. But I want to go over this in an episode by itself, but I'll brush over the concept right now. When communicating with your team, it's important that you give prudent information without too much fluff. For instance, if you were going to call out that these two bots were here, and you had a call out like this was called Training B, and they were at the back of Training B, then you'd say 2 bots back Training B. You'd call it very cleanly, succinctly with the information. Say one of them was a sniper, you'd say 2 enemies back B, 1 sniper. Or just reduce it down to the most important information. As well, there are a lot of things in this game you don't need to worry about calling. For instance, if you're going to use your ult as Lucio, or you're going to use your ult as pretty much anyone, you don't strictly need to call when you're doing it. You can call to let your team know that you are going to, like, hey guys, I want to barrage, I have it available. But you don't need to say, I'm going to use barrage as Pharah, because Pharah herself says, reigning justice, right? Or the voice lines. So that's important to note, is that you don't need to call that kind of stuff out. So communications is about making sure that the information is clean, the information is prudent, and the information is, at the end of the day, not going to influence the other person's decision in a negative way. For instance, you don't want communications to have emotional backings, and that is very hard, in especially public play, to devoid yourselves of some of the emotions that are part of this. But it is much different to say that stupid Pharah is 1 hit in the back room than Pharah 1 hit back room. Because if Pharah is 1 hit, then obviously somebody is going to make the decision that it's worth going and pursuing her. She's only 1 shot from dying. But you don't need to add in the additional stuff that could tilt the other player or make them feel additional pressure or any such sides like that. So on your communications, it's really just about giving the right information and knowing what you need to call out, which we'll move into the next part as we talk about hero cooldowns and we talk about maps. Specifically with hero cooldowns, this video, I want to keep it shorter, so I'm not going to go over all of them. But small things that you need to know, like Tracer's blink is on a 3-second cooldown with 3 charges. Her rewind is on a 12-second cooldown. And that her pistols do 6 damage for every bullet for a 40 bullet clip, that damage drop down to 3 damage. And I know that is a lot of information, but there are text resources such as the Wikipedia page, the Overwatch page itself. There are so many opportunities to find that information, and I can link that down in the description below. But learning that and knowing that in the back of your head will help you out a lot. But now we're going to go ahead and move into the next section of the mechanics, which is understanding the maps themselves. So guys, now we're going to look over maps and other data information, such and so, that you need to understand or know. Again, a lot of this is stuff that I will not be able to explain in the next few minutes during this video, but it is stuff that you guys can study and learn. So again, part of understanding the maps is very important. When you're pushing into the second part of Dorado, onto the streets phase, a lot of people forget that the offense can actually access this top area over here. We'll go ahead and give you a look over here. By using this stair path, or this pathway right here, if you gain control of this courtyard, you can get up this stairwell, as you can see right here, and this goes into the top of the church building, which is some of the call out I've heard for what this is being called. And again, that's another part of this that we'll go into, is callouts. But this kind of route taking on the map is very important. Most people do know a little bit about this back area, but you can go through this back entire area and use this broken vault part to flank when this is in a spawn, to flank this area as well as this area up here that I'm shooting shurikens to. So again, guys, and part of what I want to get at here is that you can just learn all of this by watching games, playing games, but of course also just running around in the maps. It is a way to help understand the little intricacies without having to worry about whether or not you're going to win or lose. For instance, using this secret right here, or what is called secret, is an extremely useful path for the offense. When you're pushing this first area, you can sneak up through here, and you're immediately behind the fountain area, and you can just do a lot of damage as Genji specifically. But heroes like Widow, Diva, Winston can all access that kind of route. As well as, again, there's that basement path that most people tend to avoid or don't use, at least what I have seen in public games, and this is this one down here. And now some of this is geared towards public players and some of this is geared towards competitive players, but the point is that if you want to get better at the game of Overwatch and you want to learn the game, part of it is knowing this basic stuff down to an intuitive level. If you know that two heroes are going this way, and you know two heroes are going this way, but there's two other heroes missing, and you know that they're not with the other sets of heroes, then they have to be back here, or they have to be somewhere in an area that isn't explored. And if you know for a fact that the basement, as well as that stairwell over here, this area over here, and this back area are really the only paths that are accessible, assuming they're not all the way back in your spawn for some reason, then you know that they're going to be back over here. And you can use that information or non-information to gain more concrete knowledge about the game and the map in that specific instance. So again, guys, here I just want to emphasize on Dorado that running around the maps and understanding all of the different routes and what they can do for you, when to use them, is very important. The next thing I want to point out, as far as the maps go, and we'll be moving into the more nebulous stuff in a second, guys, is that studying the cooldowns, the values, and all of that, while tedious and not entertaining, is very important to moving up a level in the game. No matter where you're at, being a basic player that just started the game or just learned and wants to get into it so that you can be a positive factor of your team, or a medium skilled player who wants to get into competitive but isn't necessarily the best player, or say that you are, that's really annoying, or say that you are a competitive player who wants to move on to that next level and get signed by a premier team or whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you don't know all of the cooldowns, all of the number values, and all of the different paths around the map, it will greatly inhibit your ability to make on-the-fly decisions that benefit your team, because the amount of information you have to make those decisions is dramatically decreased because you haven't given yourself that basic research. So again, part of this is that sometimes to get better at games or at competitive activities is knowing the bases of these competitive activities to improve on them. So I want to emphasize that while this may not be the most entertaining or the most engaging part about learning a game, running around maps and understanding what they are or how they're laid out and what paths give you what will help you out a lot. And that's just half of the information. Again, the other half is that, and I will not be covering that in this video per se, but if there is enough requests, then I would gladly cover it in another video, is heroes' cooldowns, damage values, damage drop distances. What happens when Roadhog whole hogs a Zarya ult? Spoiler is it doesn't push them out of the Graviton Surge. But knowing those kinds of interactions in the heat of the battle is very important because it'll remove indecision, it will remove, and it will add a level of execution, because you will know what is going to happen, you know the interactions, and so you can act appropriately. So again, guys, this first section is mainly just covering these ideas of the concrete. parts of the game that you can improve on. Your communication skills, your ability to aim and track a target despite moving, ducking, dodging, getting shot at, or using cover, and constantly hitting that target. And then, of course, just the basic information that is required for the game, knowing the maps, the layouts, the paths, and I didn't say it in this part yet, but the health pack layouts is another thing. And then, of course, knowing the heroes, cooldowns, their hero abilities, the cooldowns of those abilities, the cooldowns of their reloads, of their internal cooldowns of firing. Again, for back to the instance of Tracer, her pistol is reloaded in 1 second, and the clip is completely shot out in 1 second. So she fires and reloads every 2 seconds. And so there are little things like that that will help out a lot. So again, guys, this is just the basics in that sense, and I will gladly be going over this again for supports and tanks. But primarily this is to cover aiming, which at the end of the day, if you can't aim as a tank or support, it will hurt you. And so there are still mechanics that those roles should improve on. Now we'll be moving into the second part of the episode where we'll be covering more nebulous or conditional parts of the game and your situational awareness, positioning, and how those ideas can help you use your abilities properly and execute in the game of Overwatch. Welcome to the final part of the episode, guys. And here we'll be covering, again, these more nebulous concepts. The three that will be going on throughout this game, and we will do part of this game as we did, again, cover those basics before in the first section. But we'll be looking at positioning, map awareness, and how to combo abilities. Now, part of this will be a lot easier to do when there is a replay client. Part of this will just be you playing the game and learning the stuff yourself. But the situational awareness is incredibly important for defense and offense and just playing any game in general. And what I mean by situational awareness is right now in Tailspin's head, he's saying to himself, where is the enemy team? Where are they going to be coming through? When are they going to be coming through? And in what kind of setup are they going to be coming through? This influences how he lobs his grenades, the angles obviously, and also the general heroes that he's going for. So it's important to know that the situations of the game evolve and change rapidly. And being able to adapt to those situations and evolve and change rapidly is very important. So again, with Tailspin there, on that Junkrat, it was really, again, just hearing the information from his team. I'd also like to take a moment to talk about his positioning, is that you will learn certain setups as you play and learn the game. Junkrat setting up behind that behind the police room and then set up on that stairwell and lobbing grenades through it, bouncing it off inside of it, does end up landing right at that archway. And can be a spot that Junkrat can fall back to his team and have a room that he can lob grenades into. But again, that is just one situation and one condition that you can learn and you can evaluate. And that's kind of what I want this to be. Whereas most Stratwatches, I will be looking at this very in depth and giving you guys analysis as to why these players are doing what they're doing. In this specific instance of it, I want to walk it through as if I am analyzing it for myself, and as if I am trying to learn those positioning and situational awarenesses. So again, here, if I was going to be looking at somebody like Milo, or specifically for me, I'll be looking at Tailspin in this game. But if you wanted to study like Milo and his positioning, you would need to watch this replay a few times through and know what Milo is doing at all instances. Here we would be looking at Milo and be saying that he hasn't used his shield in quite a bit. In fact, he's just flicking his shield on and off, and then he ends up dropping his Earth Shatter. That ability to know when to use your shield and when it's better to just swing away and get that massive cleave damage to farm up that Earth Shatter is very important. And if you watch that fight over 2 or 3 times, you could say to yourself, based upon what information you've learned from that fight, why did Milo do what he did? If you wanted to learn more about in the sense of what Taimu is doing here as McCree, the same principles apply. If you're going to study players, you need to watch what they do in multiple instances and how they go about it. And that will give you understanding of the situations of the game. As you can see here, if you were a Lucio player, and you were dealing with an entire team pushing a cart, you can see that he eventually just decides it's not worth my time. And that he's going to go back to his team to help them get back to this point, speed them out, if you were. And he doesn't end up dying. He doesn't end up really sacrificing himself. And that is Harry Hook on that Lucio, and he runs away. And that condition, that situation was prompted by the fact that his team was dead. His team was dying, his team was not in a position to fight. So I need to get my team back to the next fight. which means I need to retreat. Here again, you can see Tailspin sees that most of the fight is going on around the payload. And he ends up actually he ends up almost getting the Mercy, but unfortunately the Mercy does end up escaping. But again, all of this is just looking at why the players do what they do. And that gives us situational awareness. And it is hard, and I apologize for re-saying the words, guys, but it is hard to capitulate that at the end of the day, every single time you make a decision in a game, that decision is influenced by previous experience and by watching other players play. And if your previous experience and your knowledge and research of watching other people's plays leads you to making the right plays, it feels better and it will reinforce those good plays. But when you make the wrong plays, you need to know and understand why. And part of that is learning the game more. As you can see there, it might be worth it to say, I don't know if it was worth it for Seagull to pull off that ultimate there. His team wasn't there to back him up. There was no crowd control. And that's maybe a situation where you would feel like that's not an ult I would like to take. But I would also like to emphasize the idea of positioning here. Along with these conditions and situations, there's also the idea of positioning. Where do you stand? How do you stand? Whether are you in high ground? Are you on low ground? Are you standing in the far back like Taimu here? Notice how he stands on the cart. Again, something we could just look at by analyzing the qualitative stuff that is going on in this game is that Taimu gets on the cart when his team is waiting for the push to come. He fans the hammer, throws out a few left clicks, and pokes at the enemy team until they get on the cart, in which case he immediately runs away and sets up to get a high noon as they're fighting on the cart. And that is a play or an execution that you as a McCree can execute pretty much any game you're on a payload. And doing that over and over again while eventually readable is important to have that kind of play, because then you can change it up to something else. But that positioning, that understanding is very important. Here Tailspin is just getting over and doing a rocket or two, and he backs out. So it would be worth it to possibly read into the idea that Tailspin doesn't want to stay over the enemy and continually rain rockets for as long as possible, but rather he'd get in a quality rocket or two and then escape out safely. He also keeps staying around the edges of the fight, using the edges of the map to hide from the enemy, and then coming in from the maximum height possible, and then slowly descending into the fight, and then that's when he rips out that rocket barrage and ends up getting a triple kill. And that all just comes from watching these games and learning them. So again, this part is a lot harder for me to say that this is exactly how you get better at the game, because there are so many different variables that happen within a game. In fact, we don't even have the team's communications right now or the team's playbook. We don't know exactly what their plan is or what their prescribed motions of the defense are, or for that matter, LG on the offense. So we have to look at the conditions of the game, figure out the variables that we can, and reduce it down to what we possibly can to prudent information. And that's what we've been doing this whole replay. And this is what I do for Stratwatch, except on a much longer period of time, looking over the episode multiple times. And I just want to emphasize to you guys that this can happen at any point in your day. All you have to do is pull up a VOD with no sound, or with sound if you're interested in the commentator's analysis or insights on the games. And you can look at what the players are doing, and then go into your own game. Say you are watching Tailspin right now. You could watch this 5-minute instance of Tailspin absolutely running house on the side of the defense here, and you could emulate that in your next play. Well, what is he doing right? His movement around the map is very good. He's team-shotting incredibly well with Taimu. Every single time there's a tag from Taimu, you can see that the Pharah is actively looking to shoot the targets that he tags, and vice versa. Whenever there's a tag out from Pharah, Taimu is looking to clean up that target and not looking to let them live. And that's just that idea that you can communicate and you can use that situation and you can exploit it and then dominate the game. And again, throughout this too, there is the combination of abilities. Knowing when and where to use your abilities. For instance, sometimes in those graviton surges, it's 100% not worth it to use Earthshatter. Because why not just use Flashbang to combo with the graviton surge, and it stuns anyways. And then you can just swing away with your Reinhardt, fan with the McCree, and then the 5.5 second stun from Flashbang is more than enough to help set up that play. Here we have another great ult from Tailspin, again, because of his positioning, his understanding of the map, and not making it easy for them to kill him, and also communicating with his team. So that, guys, is mainly what I wanted to cover in this section. Again, these concepts are more nebulous, and this episode as a whole is more geared towards that idea that if you guys want to improve individually, how do you do that? What are the mechanics of the game? And as a brief recap, the mechanics that we covered in this, and these are more towards the role of the DPS, and I want to do tank and support episodes, but I will need a replay client to properly give you guys information for that, is that you need to be able to aim and you need to be able to track. You need to be able to get headshots and you need to be able to follow the enemy while they're shooting at you, while you're dodging. And you can improve that in the training mode by going and practicing your aiming and etc. like that. Your communication skills are just an honest evaluation of yourself in the heat of the moment. Do you get too emotional? Do you not get emotional? Do you not talk? And all of these other things you need to be honest with yourself. If you're too quiet, consider giving a little bit more information in the game. If you talk too much, consider playing more and not focusing so much on communication. And if you have problems where you're adding emotions into your communication skills, then consider taking a deep breath. As much as that's not the thing that you want to hear at that time, it is the right thing to do, and it will help you see more clearly and more impartially what is the proper play. Moving on into the more unnebulous stuff, as it is kind of a quasi, knowing the heroes and the maps, while is concrete, knowing when and where to exploit the routes, the health packs, and the synergies of the hero's cooldowns and abilities is a situational thing. So do note that you will have to practice and you will have to research this stuff to get better at it. So learn the maps, learn the heroes, and learn all of that stuff so you guys can move on to the situational understanding of the game, which is your positioning, your map awareness, the enemy team, and that kind of stuff that you can't learn over one game, but you will learn over the acclimation or the accrued games that you play as a player and learn, fail, succeed, and eventually as a player will grow and move forward. And the last thing I want to say, guys, and this should probably be at the beginning, but is that at the end of the day when you're improving, remember that results-oriented or looking at whether or not you care about winning or losing is not strictly as important. Even if you're only winning 53% of your games right now and you want to get into competitive play, getting up to 60% win rate isn't playing better in a nebulous thought. It's working on all that stuff I just said. So instead of focusing on gaining 7% in your win rate, focus on improving on tracking or map awareness or any of the other concepts we've covered, and it will improve your win rate. Whether it's that 7% or not is up to you as a player and how much you improve and how much you're willing to look at yourself and be honest. But it will help you improve. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and end the episode here before it becomes too much of a ramble. Again, this episode was just looking at how you as an individual can improve. I want to cover other roles in this game, but all of these topics and all of these concepts are incredibly important for any role in the game to learn and develop. Thank you so much, guys, for watching episode 8. Again, here we covered individuals and how you as an individual can improve in the game of Overwatch and up your Overwatch understanding. Again, these are nebulous concepts, and as I mentioned it throughout it, they will take time and understanding to get there. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys would like to know more about the series, please do subscribe to the channel, which you can click above, and it will lead you to the channel page, as well as watch other episodes of Stratwatch. If you guys find this information useful and you want to learn more, I do have more episodes that is starting to add together, and there is more topics to cover. That being said, if you guys want this series to improve, because I want it to improve, please give me feedback. Tell me what you think I'm doing right, tell me what you think I'm doing wrong, or tell me concepts, ideas, topics that you would like to see covered so I can help cover the topics that you as players and you as spectators would like to see. Again, guys, my name is RaptorZ, and this is Stratwatch, and I cannot say how awesome it is that you guys watch this, and thank you so much for all of your support and all of your feedback throughout this series.